Hey guys, welcome into SportsBeat KC. I'm Rustin Dodd alongside Sam Mellinger. Hey Sam.
Yes.
This is a new era of Royals baseball coverage.
Thank God.
Andy McCullough is off to LA.
That's right.
He's an LA guy now. I think he made it his cross-country drive a few days ago. But now that Andy's gone, what are you going to remember most about the Andy McCullough era at the Star?
His freak out during Game 5 of the World Series when his computer went to crap, probably, where he thought that, or where I thought that he might hurt someone.
I almost died.
Up to and including himself. There was a moment. Like, the thing that I love about Andy, like, when he gets pissed off is, one, how often it happens. Two, the very low threshold that is required for him to get really pissed off. And three, that it always fuels this like just string of 25-word insults where every word is at least 6 syllables and you understand like half of it, and he just looks so aggravated that he wants to hurt himself. And then at some point in the middle of it, he's like punching the wall, I think. Wasn't he punching a wall or something, Chris?
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just the desk.
Yeah, there was some pounding. Yeah.
And there was somebody like a row back or 10 seats down that was like, "It's just a game, buddy," or something like that. And I was like, "Oh, no, we don't need this."
I don't know how much you talked about this on previous podcasts. I wasn't an avid listener to you guys. Sorry.
That's BS.
But but I remember I was like standing a few feet away, and Andy came over and he was like, "I need some help." And then he's like, "Please help me." Yeah. And so I walked over, and like editor Chris Fickett was on the scene, and everybody was kind of freaking out, and Andy was about to kill himself, and I just sort of like slunk away. It was like there was like nothing.
Step up, Rustin.
There was nothing to be done at that moment. I had no idea what to do. I'm like, I'm gonna go work on my bad story about Matt Harvey.
I just said way to step up, but Rustin's right. There really was there was no helping that situation. You can only make it worse, I think, by getting in Andy's face. I don't know.
I also remember, like, so I was seated like literally like right next to him, and he was like shaking. I mean, like literally his like fingers and hands and arms were like shaking with fear, and there was just such a at one point just a defeatism, just like I'm screwed. He didn't say screwed, but I'm screwed. And I remember like we can laugh about it now, and I have to thank my 1-year-old for training me how to talk to people when they're in these temper tantrums. And I remember he just said, "Andy, calm down. You know what happened? The 7th inning, I forgot what happened in the 7th inning, but something happened in the 7th inning of that game. The 7th inning, that's a block. Work on that. The 9th inning, that's a block. Work on that. You have at least a half hour. Let's just calm down." And remember, he just looked at me and he kind of nodded his head and then put on his earphones and listened to some terrible music, I'm sure, and then wrote was a beautiful game story.
Yeah, he got it done.
Good job, Andy.
But yeah, if you don't know, I'm the new beat writer for the Royals for the Star.
Thank God.
So we're gonna do this podcast maybe once a week or so when the season rolls around, but then we'll see. Until then, we'll figure out the spring training schedule and all that kind of stuff. But hey,
I think Rustin can pull it off once a week, right?
Yeah, we can.
Sure.
We can see what we can do.
I do. Before we go any further, I do want to clear something up, Rustin, and maybe I should have talked to you about this before we got on quote unquote air here. But you had a tweet the other day that I absolutely loved, which was something like somebody had said basically like Bill Self's an idiot, he should be fired. It was when is he finally going to be held accountable or something like that?
Yeah.
And you said, "I'll miss tweets like this the most." You will have more tweets like that.
Yeah.
You will. There will be no shortage of kind of insane tweets sent your way on your new beat.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. But yeah, I always think it's funny when people ask you like, when are you going to hold these guys accountable? It's like, you know what? After this game, I'm going to go to the press conference and punch Bill Self in the face.
Right. What have you accomplished here?
Yeah, what? That's, okay, I'll do it, But anyway, so hey, Sam, so I wanted to, I don't know when the last time you and Andy or you guys talked Royals on this podcast, but it's been a good offseason for the Royals, pretty eventful. But I guess the last big move was signing Ian Kennedy, which is not official yet. He hasn't completed a physical. That may be done later this week. But I wanted your thoughts on Ian Kennedy joining the rotation and what that can mean, and also the dollar amount. $70 million for Ian Kennedy. I know you wrote about this when it happened, but what do you think about this move?
It's way too much money. I mean, like, there's no way around that. It's too much money for a guy who, you know, might be average or above average. But everybody's making too much money, you know, including the owners. And, you know, you'd much rather, at least I would much rather have that money go to the players that we all, you know, want to watch and that decide the games, instead of the owners who are taking on no risk and making the rules and all that. But if we can get past the money, it's a really good fit for the Royals for a lot of reasons. Starting with he's a fly ball pitcher who will be in a really big ballpark with a terrific outfield defense. You know, if we can assume, because Alex Gordon, when he came back from that groin injury, was not moving around the outfield or around the bases as quickly, as fastly as he was before the injury. It definitely took a half step at least off of. I remember him getting thrown out at third base at Citi Field in the World Series. I forgot which game that was. That was, you know, sort of, oh, okay. That was the first, like, obvious point. And I think everybody knew that. But if he's back to where he was, or at least close to it, Lorenzo Cain, there's no reason to think he's slowing down quite yet. And then right field should be better defensively in 2016 than 2015. So that'll help him. Ian Kennedy comes from, obviously, like, another huge ballpark in San Diego, but that was an atrocious defense that he had behind him. So I'm assuming that ERA included a lot of fly balls that were dropping for singles, doubles, even triples in that ballpark in front of that horrendous defense that will be outs when Lorenzo Cain and Gerard Dyson are running him down. So that's a good fit. He has some history. It's old, but some history with Dave Island. And you have to assume that Dave Island, you know, gave his approval or you know, is excited about this and thinks that he can get something out of Ian Kennedy. The other reason that it's a good fit is that he has averaged something like 196 innings over the last 5 or 6 years. He's incredibly reliable, incredibly dependable, and they need innings. You don't know what you're going to get out of Yordano Ventura. Edison Volquez threw 200 innings in the regular season and then something like 30, 34, or 35 more in the playoffs, and those were high velocity. I mean, you remember when he was throwing the hardest fastballs, you know, certainly of the season, and maybe I don't know how many years it's been since he was throwing that hard. You have to think that he's worn down a little bit, and if nothing else, we'll get off to maybe a little bit of a slow start. Chris Young, you know, hasn't thrown more than, you know, you're not relying on Chris Young to make 34 starts. So there's just a lot of guys that there's a lot of question marks. So this is a guy that you can plug in. 200 innings won't get you beat, you know, sort of what Jeremy Guthrie was supposed to be a long time, you know, like maybe what Jeremy Guthrie was a few years ago, just some innings, solid innings, and that's exactly what they need.
Yeah, his strikeout numbers are pretty good too.
Yes.
I mean, he's been about a strikeout in an inning. Although, and he gave up a lot of home runs last year. I think I saw something where if you transposed Kaufman over what is the ballpark in San Diego? Petco,
yeah.
That maybe there would have been 6 or 7 fewer homers at Kauffman Stadium than he gave up last year, which I guess I don't know what that would, you know, equate to in an ERA, maybe half a run, maybe for
I
mean, maybe not that much.
Depends
maybe
on a lot of things, like how many guys are on base.
Yeah, exactly,
and
but
like
maybe less than that. But so yeah, I think there's definitely some upside there. But I'm wondering, you've got Ventura and Volquez sort of at the top of the rotation in some order. I don't know who's going to start opening day. I mean, I guess Ventura could start opening day again. I guess they could lean on Volquez there just to sort of take some pressure off Ventura. Then you've sort of got Kennedy maybe kind of solidified at the 3, probably not getting higher than that, but maybe not lower. What do you think about the last 2 spots in the rotation? I mean, you obviously have Young, Medland, and you also have Danny Duffy, but how do you sort of handicap that?
I would expect it to be Medlin at the 4, and then Young or Duffy, and I'm not sure that it really matters that much between Young and Duffy who's the 5, because I think that
they're both going to start.
Yeah, they're both going to start, and they're both going to come out of the bullpen, and so maybe it's just a question of whose arm is feeling better at that point in the season. where they are mentally, things like that. But, I don't think that neither one of those guys is going to be in the rotation the whole year, I don't think, Young or Duffy, even assuming full health.
Yeah.
If they do, that means somebody else got hurt as well.
Yeah. Okay. No. So I'm wondering. Actually, sticking with Medlin, I do. Yeah. Are we sure that he's a 4 or 5 starter that you want making 25 to 30 starts in a season?
No, I mean I don't like the whole rotation is quite.
Yeah.
You can poke a hole in each one of those spots. Like, like Volquez had a really good year last year, but like I was just alluding to, you don't know how much has been taken out of him physically, and that was the best year that he had in a really long time. And if you're comparing him to ones around the American League, he's not close. If you're comparing him to like David Price or like legitimate ones, Yordano Ventura is nothing but a question mark in so many ways. But if so in that context, I like Medlin. I think that he throws strikes. I think that he has a lot of talent. If you look at what he did in Atlanta, and Tommy John surgery, even now when it's almost part of a guy's career, to have Tommy John surgery, but it's not necessarily part of a guy's career to have 2 Tommy John surgeries. And so that is a significant question mark. But if he can regain some of that form that he had in Atlanta and be 90% of that pitcher or 85% of that pitcher or whatever, then he's a really good forward.
Yeah, and I guess you could argue too that he came back mid-season last year, and maybe there was some kind of growth period or a kind of an adjustment period to get back. Any guy that has Tommy John, it takes some time to kind of get back into form. So we'll see there. But I want to ask you. So we were talking a little bit before we started recording this about the AL Central and the division, and I'm going to be completely honest. I've been spending the last 3 months covering the Kansas basketball team, and I haven't really exactly brushed up on the AL Central off seasons. But you've got the Royals. They obviously brought back Chris Young. They got Ian Kennedy. They re-signed Joakim Soria, or at least reacquired Joakim Soria, I should say. But do you think? I mean, are the Royals? Would you still say they are the class of the AL Central going into the season? I mean, obviously the Tigers made some moves, some upgrades, and adding Zimmerman and adding Justin Upton. But where do you see kind of the division shaking out?
I think that when we make predictions, like first of all, they're all crap, right? Like nobody knows anything. But I think like the biggest mistake that we make a lot of times when making predictions is relying too much on the immediate past performance, and sometimes we have a hard time seeing what's about to happen. That said, yes, I do think that the Royals are the best team in the Central by a decent amount. I think that I thought they were the best team in the American League all of last year, with the exception of like a 2 or 3 week period in September where there are reasons for that. They were resting guys. The Blue Jays were playing like, out of their minds. And the difference between the Royals and the Blue Jays I don't think was that much. But I do think that the Royals were the best team overall, wire to wire in the American League, and significantly so in the AL Central. The Tigers for a long time, you always thought like they're gonna get old, and when they get old, they're gonna get old fast. And that's what happened last year. I mean, they won like 75 games or something like that, right? But they I can look it up here real quick. 74-87. They finished last place in the Central, which is pretty remarkable. But I do think that if you're handicapping it right now, I think the Royals are the favorite. You can have an argument, I think, between the Tigers and the Indians. I would pick the Tigers. I just think that they're going to have a huge lineup. They're going to hit the bejesus out of the ball, and it's a lot of right-handed hitters. But I don't really care about all. I mean, like Miguel Cabrera and Justin Upton and J.D. Martinez, and I mean, they've got just a lot of sticks in that lineup, and if nothing else, they're going to win some games 7-5. And they lose from, if you just look at the team last year, and they traded him at the deadline, but you lose David Price. I think Justin Verlander, nobody knows what you're going to get out of him, but Zimmerman does provide that rotation with kind of a reliable. He's like Ian Kennedy if Ian Kennedy was good, like a reliable guy who can win some games as opposed to just eat some innings. So I do like their team, but the Indians have a lot of talent and they're going to figure it out at some point. I think the Twins were kind of a 4-month fun ride. They were a little bit like the 03
I guess
Royals.
They still have a little bit of growth potential, I guess, because of how young they are. I don't know exactly what they've done this offseason. I'm admitting my ignorance here. I can tell you what happened in the Big 12.
You can.
But no, so are you – you're not sold on the Twins. And are the White Sox then – are they the fifth team in this conversation, or are they is the division flatter in that way? And it could be –
Well, I don't know. Like I hope I'm not – sounding like just like the Kansas City guy here or whatever, like the homer or whatever. But I think that there's a little bit of a separation between the Royals and the 4. And I think that there's less separation between whoever's the 2 and whoever's the 5. Right, yeah. You know what I mean? So, I mean, the Twins have a lot of, like you just mentioned, they do have some talent. Like Sano is going to be a monster. That guy is going to be a problem for a long time. He's got so much power. And they've got some young arms and stuff like that, but who knows? I mean, they could catch it and be right there with the Royals into August and September. But watching that team last year, I just kept thinking like they're not this good. Like they have to fall off at some point, and they ended up doing it a little bit. I mean, I really think the Royals' biggest competition. This sounds so weird, after what we've seen with the Royals for a long time, but the biggest competition is outside the division, because they're at a point now, obviously, where I mean, they want to win the division. That's a goal, but it's not the goal. You know what I mean? Like they've got, they are very much at the point where if they win the AL Central by 8 games and then lose the division series, they're going to go home very disappointed and feeling like they didn't accomplish what they wanted to. Yeah.
Do you think this is a fair assessment to say that the Royals, compared to where they were in Game 5 of the World Series, that roster, they've maybe downgraded just a few ticks, but compared to where they were on opening day last year, they've upgraded. I mean, would you say that's or do you think it's about equal? Yeah,
I hadn't thought about it in that way, but yeah, I think that's probably right. Like, because the Royals still have, we can have a discussion about Alex Gordon, obviously, and Kendrys Morales, I guess, but they don't have a lot of older guys that you expect that are on the wrong side of that. They're no longer a young team, but they're not yet an old team. You know what I mean? Like, I still think that Eric Hosmer's best season of his career is in front of him. I think Mike Moustakas' best year may have been last year, but he can still be a good player. I think Alcides Escobar can be a lot better hitter than he was last year. Sal Perez, if he gets in a little bit better shape, and if Ned actually rests him some instead of just talks about resting him, there's more production in him. So I mean, if you compare it to the playoff roster, the biggest difference to me is Ben Zobrist. I think that's pretty obvious, but I mean, they've got all those guys back. I mean, Lorenzo Cain is a star, and I don't know how many people outside of Kansas City or outside of like super nerdy baseball circles maybe realize that, even though he's had some really big moments in the last 2 postseasons. But that guy's an absolute star, and Gordon is a bankable player, and I think Hosmer is at least bankable with the potential to be really, really good. Nobody would have guessed this opening day last year, but as it turns out, what they got out of right field, they might get more out of right field this year. What they got out of second base before the trade, they can't get much less out of second base this year. And if they really think Infante's healthy and that's not like a mental thing, or just an old thing, then maybe he can be a passable player instead of as bad as he was last year. But anyway, I mean, the Royals they just have a lot. There's no perfect team, right? But the Royals' strengths are stronger than virtually every other team in the American League, and their weaknesses are pretty dealable.
Okay.
I got an Infante question.
Yeah.
I think you guys might be able to tackle this. If obviously the Royals they probably needed to bring in another starting pitcher to spring training, and so if it wasn't Ian Kennedy, they'd probably bring in somebody else. But here's the question: if you have that $70 million, could you have gotten another starting pitcher to bring in to help the rotation and walked away from Infante? And then what would be your option?
Well, I think that's kind of the issue, right? Is you can walk away. It's hard, and we can get into a discussion about sunk costs.
It's sort of an economic question.
But I don't know what the other second base options were really going to be, and I think in Ian Kennedy they spent too much money, but
they needed a pitcher. I mean, so
yes. They absolutely needed a pitcher, because another thing we didn't talk about earlier about why they needed another starting pitcher, a bankable innings starting pitcher, is that the bullpen's terrific and it's deep and all that, but it's been used a lot. And when Chris Young is a 5-inning pitcher and you don't know what Medlin's going to be, you never know what Ventura's going to be, you need somebody that you can count on to get you 6 or 7. And if you look around, on the free agent market, like they lost out on Ben Zobrist, and I think Zobrist always wanted to play for the Cubs. Dan Murphy was a free agent. He ended up signing, a deal that the Royals probably could have afforded, but
he doesn't really fit their profile.
Not at all. He's the opposite of their profile. So I mean, the free agent market, and maybe that was an opportunity. Like Kelly Johnson or somebody, has a history with Atlanta, or Gordon Beckham. I mean, the list of free agents. Second baseman is pretty weak. So, and they also feel like, I think Christian Colon factors into this, and that they think at least Christian Colon can be a placeholder. And I also think that Raul Mondesi fits into this. That they feel like, if nothing else, Raul Mondesi can play defense and he can run. And I'm not saying he's going to be up in the big leagues this year. And I'm certainly not saying that he'll contribute in the big leagues this year, but I think that those two things, do play in your mind. Like they don't have, Miguel Amante is not ready for 30 starts or whatever. Kyle Zimmer, they would love if he got 25, 30, minor league starts this year, just no injuries, So I think, a lot of that is looking at your options too. But I mean, that's they've made a lot of good moves, over the last 5 years, and Omar Infante is not one of them.
But again, when they got him, it was an issue. It was a need. They didn't have an option there. And
yes.
So it's almost a similar situation this year, where they needed a starting pitcher, and sometimes when you get caught in that need, that's why you overpay, because you don't have any other options.
Yes, absolutely.
So they overpaid for Infante, and now they're overpaying for Ian Kennedy. But the alternative is not great.
Right. There were some other options that they could have gone to in the starting pitching market, but they all have, we can pick apart Ian Kennedy, but like Giovanni Gallardo is aging quickly. If the scouting and the sabermetric judgments on him are fading at a pretty significant rate. They got outbid, or at least Chen signed a bigger contract than what they gave Kennedy. I think that there were just, for whatever reason, their scouting judgments on Mike Leake were not strong. Doug Fister, there's enormous questions about his elbow and whether he can whether he can make it through a big league season. So there's no perfect options, but if you're going to spend a ton of money on either a second baseman or a starting pitcher, considering all the other options available, the case for Ian Kennedy is not without merit.
Cool. Okay, Sam, we can wrap this up in a minute, but I got Real quick, though, is there anything we didn't talk about? Because I have some more questions for you, by the way.
I'm sure there's a lot of things we didn't talk about. But
yeah, well, we can save those for another time. But okay, here's what I wanted to bring up, though. So as in the last few days, I've been getting a lot of tweets from Royals fans, very specific questions, and I wanted to hit you with a couple of these questions. So some of them are very specific, and some of them I was stumped. I was literally stumped by I have no idea what the answer to that would be.
Right.
Number one would be, who is more major league ready, Raymond Fuentes or Bubba Starling? And I gotta admit I don't know much about Raymond Fuentes. I know he's in the system and he's a corner outfielder-ish player, but is this what do you even think about this question?
Well, I think the answer is, neither one of them, really. But I think that Bubba Starling is obviously the more well-known guy, and I think similar to what I just said about Raul Mondesi, Bubba Starling right now can defend and run, not just at a big league level, but at a high big league level. With the bat, not so much, or at least that's a huge question mark. Fuentes is a guy that, for sure, the Royals are thinking about, and if you talk to those guys, if you talk to the people in the, in the baseball operations department, when they talk about the right field is going to be Dyson in Orlando, kind of they never use this word platoon, but, kind of in a platoon, they will also talk about Fuentes. And, he put up big numbers last year in Omaha. It's the minor leagues. It was only 100 games, but he hit over 300, with a little bit of power. So, I mean, I think to answer the question, literally answer the question, I think that Fuentes is closer, but I think Starling might be there as well this summer, and Starling certainly has a higher ceiling.
Okay. You don't need to answer these in such long and eloquent fashion, but the other one I've been getting a lot is, you mentioned him, but Kyle Zimmer. I know it's sort of
who's Kyle Zimmer?
Yeah,
he's a ghost.
What do I tell these people? What is the plan for Kyle Zimmer?
So that's a question that you're going to have to get used to seeing pretty much every 3 days. And if you do a mailbag every week, there will be questions about Kyle Zimmer. Just a super talented guy. The Royals have high, I was going to say expectations, but I should say hopes for him. He just can't stay healthy. And, he's a guy that could help them in the big leagues. He's close enough that, July, August, September, something like that, he could help him probably out of the bullpen. But the biggest question by far is just health with him. Okay. The most important ability is availability, Rustin, and Kyle Zimmer has not shown availability.
Okay. Finally, and maybe I should have paid more attention to this this internet meme or something, but so Andy didn't like barbecue.
Meme?
Yeah, the meme. Andy did not like barbecue. Is that true?
Who knows? So I'll say this, by the way. I met Andy for the first time before we hired him, and maybe it was when we were reaching out to him before he'd been in town for an interview. And I was in New York for something. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was the Super Bowl.
So after the 13 season. Yeah, that would have been the Super Bowl in New York.
Yeah. And so we met, and hey man, it's your town, wherever you want to go. And he picked a barbecue restaurant. And he did not Andy, how much he thinks of others.
Yeah.
He did not do that because I was from Kansas City and would want barbecue. He just did that because that was the place he wanted to go. So,
and I bet it was terrible.
It was really mediocre. It was sort of like Famous Dave's kind of place. I forgot the name of it. It had to do with a dinosaur. Is there some sort of dinosaur barbecue restaurant on the East Coast, kind of? But
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Fine, but so anyway, my point is, I'm skeptical of Andy's barbecue thing, because it is very much in his in his personality, just be the contrarian, I hate barbecue guy.
Okay. There is actually a really good barbecue restaurant in Red Hook, Brooklyn, if you're ever in New York. I can't remember the name of it though. It's a barbecue spot though. Best one in New York.
All right.
So
good to know.
Anyway, we're gonna wrap this thing up. I'm Rustin Dodd. That's Sam Mellinger.
I'm Sam.
And that's Chris Fickett on the producer
On the
role.
ones and twos.
Follow along all season